Okay, the first process we're going to be looking at is the cyanotype process invented by Sir John Herschel, the Astronomer Royal, in 1842. We're going to make a light-sensitive solution from two chemicals, ferric ammonium citrate and potassium ferricyanide. Now there are two types of ferric ammonium citrate. One is the green version, the other is the brown version. We need the green version because that's the light-sensitive one. Okay, it's quite simple. We take a 20% solution of ferric ammonium citrate and we take 1 teaspoonful of that, pour it into the cup, and then we take 1 teaspoonful of a 4% solution of potassium ferricyanide and we pour that, 1 teaspoonful of that, into the cup as well. Okay, there we go. And then it's just a matter of mixing them. And that's ready now. That's now a light sensitive solution. So we're going to coat a sheet of paper with this light sensitive solution, dry it off and then expose it to white light. We're working under tungsten light in here. If you're doing this yourself, you need to work under either subdued daylight or tungsten light. That's old-fashioned electric light bulbs. Daylight will of course fog the material, the sensitised material. Okay, so we've mixed that solution up. We're now going to sensitise a piece of paper. Now, there are two ways of coating the sheet of paper. We can either use the brush technique or we can use the rod technique. I'm going to demonstrate both. The paper is just conventional watercolour paper as used by artists. It can be any kind of paper actually because this process is quite robust and it doesn't matter what sort of paper you use. You could use newspaper, but make sure it's a paper which will survive being wet and being washed. Okay, so I'm now going to coat this sheet of paper, dip the brush into the liquid and just dip the very tip of the brush in. Don't get too much liquid on the brush. So shake off any surplus like that and then in long even strokes brush the liquid onto the paper. Brush it along the paper, like so. Then brush it across the paper, like that. Aim to get long, even strokes. And then back again, that way, lengthwise. Don't go right to the edge of the paper. Leave yourself a little margin around the edge of the paper so that you can handle it without getting the chemicals on your fingers. The chemicals aren't dangerous, they're not poisonous, but as with all chemicals it's better to keep them off your skin. If you do get them on your skin, just rinse them under the tap and that will be fine. A lot of people see the name of that chemical, potassium ferricyanide. They see the cyanide bit and instantly they're terrified and think they're going to be poisoned. But in point of fact, ferricyanide is relatively safe. Okay, there we are. We've brushed the liquid out like so. And I'm now going to go and take that and put it in the dryer. Right, the second technique for coating paper is the rod technique. This gives a much smoother coating, and to do this, first of all we need to clamp the piece of paper onto a sloping board, like so, with a piece of wood, and then put 2 clamps on like that to hold it in place. And then we get the plastic rod like this. This is actually a little bit large, but it'll do the job. You can get proper coating rods which are made of either perspex or glass. The purists like to use glass, but perspex rods are better in some respects because they are tougher and they don't break. And now I take a syringe full of the liquid and I'm going to run a thin bead of the liquid in the angle between the rod and the paper, like so. Again, don't go right to the edge, leave yourself a little bit of a margin, and there we have that bead of liquid. And now we're going to push that along the paper with the rod and we get a nice even coating of liquid. Get to the far end, lift the rod, pull the liquid back to the bottom again, step over the ridge of liquid, push it forward again like so. Aim to get a nice even coating on the piece of paper. The beauty of this process is the liquid is bright yellow, you can see where you've coated the paper. Now I've got a little bit of surplus liquid here, so what I'm going to do is to get a paper towel, put it at the end there, and I'm just going to push the surplus liquid right off the end, like that, onto the paper towel, and there we go. Okay, that's coated that sheet of paper. And you'll see with this sheet of paper, we've got a very smooth coating, very even. Okay, I'm going to go and put this one in the dryer. Right, having coated the paper, the next thing, and dried it, the next thing we need to do is to expose it. And the simplest way of doing this is in a clip frame, which is over here. Okay, take an ordinary clip frame, like that. Put the sheet of sensitive material, sensitive side up like so, and then we're going to take a negative, strip of negatives, and put them on top of the sensitised paper. Okay, just have a look at the negatives, put them down like so, put the glass on top, and clip the frame together. And having done that, we can now take this outside and put it in the sun. In bright sun, the exposure time will be about 7 or 8 minutes. On a cloudy day, the exposure time could be half an hour, 3/4 of an hour or more. And in a very dull day, it could be an hour and a half to 2 hours. You'll learn from experience how to judge the exposure time, both by looking at your eggs and by looking at the sunlight. So I'm going to take this outside now and just prop it up in the sun and leave it for a few minutes. Right, this has had about 8 minutes out in the sun, bright sun. So I'm going to unclip the frame and take out the sheet of paper. I'm going to put the glass over here out of harm's way. And you will see that the paper has now changed colour to this sort of mixture of a metallic grey-green and a darkish blue. You can't see very much at the moment, but what I'm now going to do is to wash this print, and then you will see the picture starting to emerge. So turn the water on, cold water, take the print, and then just start to rinse it off. And as you rinse it, you can see the picture starting to emerge. And we're going to wash this until all the yellow colour of the original solution has been washed out. Okay, that's starting to wash. It'll take a couple of minutes to wash out completely. So while that's washing, I'm just going to prepare the final solution for this process. And the last solution that we're going to dip it into is an intensifier, and it's quite simply made from water with about a teaspoonful of hydrogen peroxide in. That's conventional hydrogen peroxide that you can buy from any chemist. I'm going to measure out about a capful actually, and just tip that into there. So water and hydrogen peroxide. I'm just going to agitate the tray a little bit to mix it. Okay, that's mixed that, and this print now is washed. It only takes a couple of minutes to wash out the chemical, because it's only the very surface of the paper that's actually coated with chemical. Right, there we go, and if you look at that you can now see that we've got a picture, an image on that piece of paper. Okay, now the final stage, you can see that's a sort of medium blue, sort of slightly greenish blue, and the final stage of the process is to drop it into this solution of hydrogen peroxide to intensify it. So in it goes. We just gently rock it to and fro like that, just for a few seconds, and you can see that the picture has now gone an intense purplish blue colour. And that's it. Take that out, and there you can see the blue has now become very, very intense and almost purplish blue. Back into the wash for just a few seconds, and that is the end of the process. So there we are, that's the cyanotype. The simplest of the alternative processes, a very robust process. That image will last for decades. It's the origin, that blueprint, or blue picture, is the origin of the engineering blueprint. So when you hear somebody talk about the blueprint, that's what they're referring to. Okay, there we are, let's rinse that off, and there we go, you can see now the Biddeston Church. So there we have it. Another thing we can do with the cyanotype is to make a photogram using objects rather than negatives. And again, we use a clip frame, lay a sheet of sensitised paper down, and then we'll take something like feathers. I've got some nice striated feathers here, and just lay them onto the sensitised surface like so. Finish off with a small one like that, and then I'm going to put a sheet of glass on top as usual, but this time I'm not going to use the clips, because if you try and force the clips on you will break the glass. So what we need to do is put some big elastic bands over the end like that. They'll hold the glass and the feathers in place, but they allow the glass to float on top of the feathers. So I can just move those feathers down, the elastic bands down out of the way like that, and I'm going to go and put that out in the sun again for about 8 minutes. Okay, this has had about 8 minutes in bright sun. I'm just going to unclip the frame like that, take the elastic bands off, lift the glass off, and shake the feathers off like so. Okay, and there you can see we've got an image of the feathers on the paper. So I'm now going to wash this off again. And you can see the yellow of the chemicals is washing away, leaving the image of the feathers. Keep washing it until all traces of the yellow chemicals have been washed out, and then it's ready to intensify. Now this piece of paper is one that I coated using the brush technique, and you'll notice that the edges have got this nice rough texture to them. Some people prefer that. Some people like the slight roughness at the edges. It gives it a sort of more organic feel. And I think it suits the subject as well. If you're doing leaves and feathers, that sort of thing, I think the brush technique suits the subject matter better than the rod technique. The rod technique, I think, is more suited to doing pictures from negatives. And if you're fortunate enough to have some large format negatives, they look absolutely superb on cyanotype. Okay, that's been washed off, and once again I'm going to intensify this in the peroxide solution. Here we go. There it goes. Rock it gently to and fro for just a few seconds. And there we have the finished photogram of the feathers. And you can see the striations of the feathers, and these feathers were multicolour feathers, they were brown and white, and you can see how the tones of the feathers have actually come through in the photogram. So back into the wash, and that's finished.